The strange thing about being invisible is that people confess everything around you. They talk louder, laugh harder, reveal secrets they would never say to someone they actually see. That was my life for 3 years inside the Bellamy Grand Hotel. I carried champagne through rooms worth more than my entire future, while rich strangers looked straight through me like I was part of the wallpaper. Table 12 needs another bottle. My manager snapped without looking up from his tablet. And smile, Celeste. You look tired. I was tired. My feet ached inside cheap black heels, and my lower back throbbed from carrying silver trays for 10 straight hours. Outside, rain hammered against Manhattan like handfuls of thrown nails. Inside, the ballroom glowed gold beneath crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Women in designer gowns drifted past me smelling like roses and expensive perfume. Men laughed beside glasses of whiskey older than I was. None of them noticed the waitress refilling their drinks. None of them remembered my name. That was fine with me. Invisible girls survived longer in this city. I adjusted the thin silver bracelet on my wrist and pushed through the ballroom doors toward the VIP section. The air changed immediately. Quieter. Colder somehow. Even the hotel staff avoided eye contact near those tables. My coworker Nina grabbed my elbow before I crossed the velvet rope. "Don't stare at table 14, she whispered. "Why?" She glanced around nervously. "Because that's Lucien DeLuca." The name meant nothing to me at first. Then I noticed the silence around his table. Not complete silence. Controlled silence. The kind built from fear and respect mixed together. For men in dark suits sat around him, but nobody really looked at them. Every eye drifted back to Lucien eventually. He sat with one hand resting beside a crystal glass, calm as winter. Dark suit. White shirt open slightly at the collar. Black watch catching the chandelier light. He looked younger than dangerous men usually looked in movies. Maybe 34. Maybe 35. But his eyes ruined the illusion completely. Cold gray. Sharp enough to cut through the entire ballroom. I looked away instantly. "Told you not to stare," Nina muttered. I grabbed the champagne bottle tighter and walked toward the table anyway because rent was due in 4 days and invisible girls didn't get to refuse assignments. One of the men stopped talking when I approached. Russian accent. Heavy enough to notice. "Shipment arrives Thursday night," he said quietly. "Pier 17. I kept my eyes lowered while filling glasses. Lucien said nothing. He simply watched the man across from him with the stillness of someone dangerous enough to never raise his voice. "Payment after inspection," another man replied. "No delays this time." My hand trembled slightly. Champagne spilled across my fingers. Pier 17. Shipment. Payment. Every instinct told me this conversation belonged far away from a Manhattan charity gala. I stepped backward too quickly. My tray clipped the edge of the table. Crystal shattered across the marble floor like gunfire. The ballroom froze. Heat rushed into my face as dozens of wealthy strangers turned toward me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, dropping to my knees. My hands shook while I gathered broken glass. Then I felt it. Someone watching me. Not casually. Intently. I looked up slowly and met Lucien DeLuca's eyes for the first time. The entire room disappeared around us. Music, conversations, laughter, gone. His expression never changed. But something inside those cold gray eyes sharpened dangerously. Then he spoke for the first time that night. "Leave through the kitchen," he said quietly. "Now." The way he said now made my stomach drop harder than the shattered crystal at my feet. Not angry. Not loud. Calm. Which somehow felt worse. Around me, conversations slowly returned like nothing had happened. Wealthy people had a talent for ignoring uncomfortable things. I gathered the last broken piece with trembling fingers and stood carefully. My manager appeared beside me instantly, smiling too hard for the guests. "Go clean yourself up," he whispered sharply. "And do exactly what Mr. DeLuca says." That caught my attention immediately. Not what he suggested. What he says. I nodded without arguing and hurried toward the service hallway behind the ballroom. My pulse hammered inside my ears louder than the orchestra still playing outside. The kitchen doors swung open with heat and noise exploding against me. Cooks shouted orders. Plates crashed. Steam rose beneath fluorescent lights. Normal chaos. Safe chaos. I moved quickly past the prep stations toward the employee lockers. "Celeste." I froze. One of the security guards from Lucien's table stood near the back exit. Tall. Dark suit. Expression unreadable. He held a black umbrella beneath one arm. Mr. DeLuca said you need to leave immediately. Why? The man glanced toward the ballroom doors. Because staying would be very bad for your health tonight. My mouth went dry. I did not hear anything. That is not the problem. He opened the exit door for me. Rain and cold air rushed inside immediately. Then what is? For the first time, the guard looked almost uncomfortable answering. The problem is that other people think you did. Manhattan hit me hard the second I stepped outside. Rain soaked the sidewalks. Yellow taxis splashed through puddles reflecting red brake lights across the wet pavement. I tightened my thin coat around myself and started walking quickly toward the subway entrance 2 blocks away. My phone buzzed inside my purse. Rent reminder. Perfect timing. I almost laughed. Somewhere behind me, a car door slammed. I looked back instinctively. 2 black SUVs sat across the street beneath the rain. Engines running. Windows tinted dark enough to hide faces. Fear slid quietly into my chest. Maybe it was coincidence. Manhattan was full of black SUVs. Rich people collected them like jewelry. I kept walking. So did the SUVs. Their headlights crawled beside me slowly through the rain. My breathing became shallow. Do not panic, I whispered to myself. Just get underground. The subway station entrance finally appeared ahead beside a flickering pharmacy sign. I moved faster. A horn sounded sharply behind me. One of the SUVs accelerated suddenly before stopping inches from the curb ahead of me. The passenger door opened. 2 men stepped out wearing dark jackets despite the rain. Not police. Not hotel security. One of them called my name. Celeste Arden. Every instinct inside me screamed run. I turned immediately and crossed the street against traffic. Tires hissed across wet pavement while horns exploded around me. Someone shouted behind me. I did not look back. My heels slipped against the slick sidewalk as I pushed through crowds beneath glowing storefronts. Cold rain stung my face. My lungs burned. Another black vehicle rolled beside the curb ahead of me suddenly. I stopped hard. Different car. Longer. Sleeker. The rear window lowered slowly. Lucien DeLuca sat inside wearing the same black suit, one hand resting near the window frame. Rain tapped softly against the roof above him. Get in, he said calmly. I backed away instantly. No, his gray eyes stayed locked on mine. Steady. Unmoving. The men behind you are not part of my organization. I glanced over my shoulder. The other SUV had stopped half a block away. The 2 men were moving through the crowd toward us quickly. Lucien opened the car door himself. You have about 10 seconds before this situation becomes very complicated. Why are they following me? Because somebody at my table talks too much. My heartbeat stumbled painfully. I do not know anything. I know. His voice softened slightly. Unfortunately, they do not. Thunder rolled above Manhattan while rain poured harder around us. The men behind me were getting closer now. One pointed directly toward me through the crowd. Lucien extended his hand once. Calm. Certain. Like a man completely and used to hearing no. Celeste, he said quietly. Get in the car. Every smart decision I had ever made in New York involved running away from dangerous men. Unfortunately, Lucien DeLuca did not look like a man people successfully ran from twice. Rain slid down his dark hair while the city lights reflected across the black car beside him. Behind me, the other men kept moving closer through the crowd. Fast now. Deliberate. My pulse hammered painfully against my ribs. I do not even know you, I whispered. Lucien's expression barely changed. That is probably the safest thing about tonight. Another horn blared nearby. Someone bumped my shoulder while rushing past beneath an umbrella. Manhattan kept moving around us like none of this existed. Lucien extended his hand again. You are out of time, Celeste. One of the approaching men shouted something in Russian. I flinched automatically. Lucien noticed immediately. Everything about him sharpened at once. Not panic. Calculation. Cold and immediate. Get in the car. This time I listened. The interior smelled like leather, rain, and something expensive I could not name. The door closed behind me with terrifying softness. Lucien entered from the opposite side, while the driver pulled into traffic instantly. I looked back through the rain-streaked window. The 2 men disappeared behind headlights and crowded sidewalks. Who are they? I asked quietly. Lucien loosened his cuff slowly before answering. People who believe witnesses create problems. I was carrying champagne. You were listening. By accident. Accidents still get people noticed. His voice stayed calm, but there was exhaustion underneath it now. The kind rich men usually hid better. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing inside my wet uniform. Lucien noticed that too. He pressed a button beside the seat. Warm air flowed through hidden vents immediately. "Thank you," I said before I could stop myself. His eyes shifted toward me briefly. "You are polite for someone sitting in a stranger's car at midnight. You are calm for someone being followed." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. Barely there. Gone instantly. Fear wastes time. Outside, Manhattan blurred past in gold and silver reflections. Rain washed neon signs across the windows like melting paint. I realized we were heading north. Away from Queens. Away from my apartment. Where are we going? Somewhere secure. I need to go home. No, the answer came instantly. Absolute. My stomach tightened. You cannot decide that. Lucien turned toward me fully for the first time since entering the car. God, those eyes were unsettling up close. Gray. Sharp. Completely awake. Tonight, I can. Silence stretched between us while windshield wipers swept rhythmically against the storm outside. "You think I am overreacting," he said finally. "I think this is insane." Fair. His honesty surprised me enough to look at him again. Most powerful men I served at the hotel performed confidence constantly. Lucien did not seem interested in performance. He looked like someone permanently tired of disappointing realities. "Then why help me?" I asked. "Because this started at my table." That is not a real answer. His jaw shifted slightly. "No, it is not." The driver turned beneath massive iron gates guarded by stone walls and security lights. My breath caught immediately. The estate ahead looked less like a home and more like a private fortress hidden inside Manhattan. Tall windows glowed warmly behind black steel fencing. Security cameras tracked the car as we entered. "You live here?" Unfortunately. Unfortunately, Lucien glanced toward the enormous house without emotion. Big houses become very quiet after a while. Something about the way he said it felt heavier than the words themselves. The car stopped beneath a covered entrance where two security men waited silently. One opened my door before I could react. Rain no longer touched us beneath the stone archway overhead. I stepped out carefully, clutching my soaked coat tighter around myself. Lucien circled the car slowly. Even exhausted, even rain-soaked, he moved like someone entirely aware of every person around him. Dangerous without trying. "How long do I stay here?" I asked. He looked toward the storm beyond the gates. "Until I know nobody is searching for the invisible waitress from the Bellamy Grand." Then his eyes returned to mine again. Calm. Focused. Impossible to ignore. "And trust me, Celeste," he said quietly. "People are searching already. Rich people always pretend large houses feel warm. They fill them with fireplaces, expensive art, and lighting soft enough to flatter secrets. But standing inside Lucien DeLuca's mansion felt like stepping into beautifully decorated loneliness. Marble floors reflected golden light beneath towering ceilings. Rain tapped softly against enormous windows overlooking the city skyline. Somewhere deeper inside the house, a clock chimed midnight. Nobody spoke above a whisper here. Even the security guards moved quietly, like the walls themselves expected obedience. A woman in a black suit approached, carrying folded clothes. "For you, Miss Arden." I stared at the cream sweater and soft gray pants in her arms. "Thank you. The guest room is ready." Guest room, not hostage room. Interesting choice of wording. I followed her upstairs through hallways lined with oil paintings and dim wall sconces. Everything smelled faintly of cedarwood and expensive cologne. The room she opened looked larger than my entire apartment in Queens. A fireplace flickered quietly beside floor-to-ceiling windows. Fresh towels waited on the bed. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Nobody had prepared anything for me in years. "There is tea downstairs if you cannot sleep," the woman said gently. "Mr. DeLuca usually does not." I looked up immediately. "He told you that?" "No, for the first time." She smiled slightly. "The lights in his office tell everyone." After she left, silence swallowed the room completely. I stood there dripping rainwater onto polished hardwood floors, suddenly exhausted enough to cry. Instead, I locked the door twice. Old habit. Then I changed into the dry clothes carefully. The sweater hung slightly oversized against my frame. Soft. Warm. Dangerous somehow, because comfort lowers defenses faster than fear. I crossed toward the windows slowly. Manhattan glittered below like another universe entirely. Tiny headlights. Neon signs. Endless movement. Somewhere inside that city, people were apparently searching for me. The thought should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, it made my chest tighten. My phone buzzed suddenly across the nightstand. Nina. I answered instantly. Celeste, where are you? Her voice sounded breathless. Panicked. I am okay. No, you are not. 2 men came back asking questions after you left. Cold spread slowly through my stomach. Questions about what? About you. Where you live. Who you talk to. I sat slowly on the edge of the bed. What did you tell them? Nothing useful. She lowered her voice. Celeste, who exactly did you get involved with tonight? I looked toward the city lights again. I honestly do not know. Another silence. Then quietly. People at the hotel are terrified of Lucien DeLuca. Why? Nina hesitated. Because people disappear around powerful men. The line went quiet after that. Not disconnected. Just heavy. I should go, I whispered. Call me tomorrow. If you can, she replied softly. The word stayed with me long after the call ended. If you can. I barely slept. Every unfamiliar sound inside the mansion pulled me awake instantly. Distant footsteps. Elevator doors. Quiet voices downstairs. Around 3 in the morning, thunder shook the windows hard enough to rattle the glass slightly. I gave up pretending to rest and wandered downstairs barefoot instead. The mansion felt even stranger at night. Empty. Beautiful. Watching. Soft piano music drifted faintly from somewhere beyond the main hall. I followed it carefully until warm light spilled across dark marble floors ahead. Lucien sat alone beside a fireplace, one elbow resting against the piano while old jazz played quietly from hidden speakers. No jacket now. Just black slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. He looked up immediately when I entered. Completely alert despite the late hour. You should be asleep, he said. You should too. A faint shadow crossed his expression. Amusement maybe. Fair enough. I noticed untouched whiskey beside him and papers spread across the piano lid. Maps. Shipping routes. Numbers. He covered them calmly with one hand before I could focus properly. Sorry, I said quickly. I was looking for tea. Lucien stood slowly. Every movement controlled. Deliberate. Kitchen is this way. I followed him through dim hallways glowing amber beneath recessed lights. Rain continued against the windows beside us. Do you ever stop working? I asked quietly. No, honest again. No performance. No fake charm. Just truth delivered flat and simple. He opened a cabinet and handed me a porcelain mug himself. Chamomile. You make tea personally for kidnapped waitresses? His gray eyes met mine over the steam rising between us. If you were kidnapped, Celeste, the doors would be locked from the outside. My breath caught embarrassingly fast. Not because the words sounded threatening. Because they sounded strangely careful. Like he wanted me to understand the difference. Lucien leaned lightly against the kitchen counter while thunder rolled outside again. You are afraid of me, he observed quietly. Should I not be? He studied me for several long seconds before answering. Probably. Then softer this time. Almost tired, but not tonight. I realized something unsettling the next morning. Lucien DeLuca's house did not feel dangerous because people carried weapons. It felt dangerous because everyone inside loved him enough to protect him without being asked. The staff moved around him carefully, respectfully, like orbiting a storm they understood too well. I woke late to pale sunlight spilling across the guest room windows. For one confused second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw Manhattan stretching beneath the glass and remembered everything instantly. The ballroom, the rain, the black SUVs, Lucien's voice telling me to get in the car. My stomach tightened again. A folded note waited beside the bed. Breakfast downstairs. Security has your phone if needed. Oh, just one letter. Like everyone should already know who he was. Maybe they did. I showered slowly, trying to clear the exhaustion from my head. The clothes waiting for me were simple but expensive. Soft cream sweater. Dark jeans. Nothing flashy. Somehow that made me more nervous. Somebody had guessed my size perfectly overnight. Downstairs smelled like coffee and warm bread. Sunlight cut across the marble kitchen in pale gold lines. Lucien stood near the counter speaking quietly into his phone. Gray suit today. Dark tie loosened slightly already. He looked like he had not slept at all. No, he said calmly into the phone. Double security at Pier 17 until I arrive. Silence. Then colder this time. I do not care what Victor promised them. He ended the call the second he noticed me standing there. Good morning, he said. Like we were normal people sharing a normal kitchen. You work early. I never stopped. Honest again. Always honest in strange places. One of the staff members placed coffee beside me quietly before disappearing. Lucien motioned toward the plate waiting nearby. Fresh fruit, eggs, toast, food arranged beautifully enough for magazines. You really think feeding me makes this less weird? I asked carefully. A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face. Is it working? Not even slightly. Good. He took a sip of black coffee without breaking eye contact. False comfort creates false confidence. You say things that sound like warnings. Most of them are. Outside, rain clouds still hovered low above the city skyline. The entire mansion felt wrapped in gray light and silence. Can I go home today? I asked quietly. Lucien set his coffee down slowly. No, frustration finally broke through my fear. You keep saying that like it is reasonable. It is necessary. For who? His expression hardened slightly. For you. I pushed back from the table. You do not know me. I know enough. No, you know where I work. I know you send money to your younger brother every month. My breath caught immediately. Lucien continued calmly. I know you work double shifts because your mother's medical debt nearly buried your family. My hands tightened around the coffee mug. Did you investigate me? Yes. No apology. No hesitation. That is insane. That is survival. I stared at him across the kitchen island, suddenly understanding why people feared him. Not because he shouted. Because he noticed everything. You had no right. Something shifted behind his eyes then. Regret maybe. Small but real. Probably not. The honesty disarmed me more than excuses would have. Before I could answer, one of the security men entered quickly through the side hallway. Sir. Lucien looked up instantly. The entire room changed. Colder. Sharper. What happened? Someone entered Miss Arden's apartment building this morning asking for her. My pulse dropped straight into my stomach. Who? The guard shook his head once. Not local. Lucien stood immediately. Come outside. Dangerous underneath. And they left after realizing she was not there. Silence filled the kitchen heavily. Lucien turned toward me slowly. Now do you understand why you are staying here? I looked down at my untouched breakfast. My appetite disappeared completely. They went to my apartment. Yes. How did they even find me? Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. Because somebody inside the hotel is talking. Fear spread through me colder than the rain outside ever had. My apartment suddenly felt tiny and exposed in my memory. Thin walls. Broken elevator. Flickering hallway lights. Easy place for strangers to wait. Lucien moved closer carefully, like approaching a frightened animal. You are safe here, Celeste. I looked up at him immediately. Safe. Strange word coming from a man whose entire world felt built from secrets. But for the first time since the ballroom, I realized something worse than being near Lucien DeLuca. Being anywhere else. People think fear arrives all at once. Like thunder. Like shattered glass. They are wrong. Real fear arrives quietly. It settles into ordinary thoughts and ruins them forever. By noon, I could not stop imagining strangers standing outside my apartment door. Lucien's staff moved around the mansion normally, while my entire life tilted sideways. Somewhere downstairs, phones rang softly. Men spoke in low voices behind closed doors. Security monitors flickered constantly near the entrance hall. Nobody panicked here. That terrified me more. I stood beside the library windows watching rain slide down the glass when Lucien entered behind me. No tie now. Dark charcoal sweater instead of the expensive suit. Message delivery timed out. Please try again. Retry. Fear changes shape after a while. The first night, it feels sharp and immediate. By the third day inside Lucien DeLuca's mansion, fear became quieter, colder, more dangerous because part of me was starting to relax. That terrified me most. I sat beside the enormous living room windows watching rain slide down the glass in silver lines. Manhattan looked blurred beneath the storm clouds. Distant. Unreal. Like my old life belonged to somebody else now. My phone rested beside me untouched. 3 missed calls from my landlord. 2 from Nina. 1 from my younger brother, Owen. I had not answered any of them. Not because I did not want to. Because I had no idea how to explain this. Sorry, I cannot come home right now. A Mafia Boss says strangers are searching for me. Completely normal Tuesday. Footsteps crossed the marble hallway behind me. I looked up automatically. Lucien loosened the knot of his dark tie while walking toward the bar cart near the fireplace. Exhaustion shadowed his face today. Real exhaustion. The kind sleep alone does not fix. You have been staring at rain for 40 minutes, he observed. Maybe I enjoy dramatic weather. No, he poured sparkling water into a crystal glass. You are thinking too loudly. I folded my arms tighter. And you always analyze people this much? Only the interesting ones. The answer came too quickly, like he had not meant to say it aloud. Silence settled between us again, heavy but strangely comfortable. Lucien leaned against the bar cart with one hand in his pocket. His white shirt sleeves remained rolled neatly to his forearms. No jacket, no audience. Somehow he looked more intimidating, relaxed than dressed for business. Did you always want this life? I asked suddenly. His gray eyes lifted toward mine slowly. No, honest again. Always painfully honest at strange moments. Then why stay in it? Lucien swirled the water in his glass thoughtfully before answering. Because some people inherit companies. His expression darkened slightly. Others inherit wars. Something about the way he said wars made my chest tighten. Not proud. Not dramatic. Tired. Like he carried years nobody else could see. You talk like you never had a choice. Most powerful men do not. I almost laughed at that. That might be the least convincing thing you have ever said. A faint smile touched his mouth briefly. God, it changed his entire face when he almost smiled. Less dangerous. More human. Which somehow felt riskier. Before either of us could speak again, raised voices echoed sharply from the front hallway. Lucien straightened instantly. The atmosphere changed so fast it stole my breath. Warmth disappeared. Something colder stepped into its place. One of the security men entered moments later. Sir, Victor is here. Lucien's jaw tightened once. Small movement. Huge reaction. He was told not to come here. He insisted. Lucien set his glass down carefully. Of course he did. I stood slowly from the couch. Should I leave? Yes. The answer came immediate and firm. Then softer. Please. That surprised me enough to pause. Please. Powerful men rarely used words like that naturally. Another voice echoed from the hallway before I could move. You hide witnesses in your house now, Lucien? A man stepped into the living room without waiting for permission. Tall. Expensive charcoal coat, still damp from rain. Light brown hair swept back carelessly. He looked polished in the way dangerous rich men always did. But unlike Lucien, this man smiled too easily. There she is, he said when he noticed me. The invisible waitress. Every instinct inside me recoiled immediately. Lucien moved slightly between us without appearing obvious about it. Protective. Controlled. You should not be here, Victor. Victor ignored him completely, eyes still fixed on me. You caused quite a mess at the Bellamy. I did not mean to hear anything. Nobody ever means to. His smile widened slightly. That is what makes accidents entertaining. Lucien's voice dropped colder than I had ever heard it. Enough. The room went silent instantly. Even Victor's expression shifted slightly at the tone. Interesting. Lucien walked closer slowly until they stood only feet apart. You will not involve her in this conversation. She is already involved. Victor glanced toward me again. That is the problem. My stomach tightened painfully. Lucien noticed immediately. He always noticed. Celeste, he said quietly without taking his eyes off Victor. Go upstairs. This time, I listened instantly. But halfway toward the staircase, Victor spoke again. Calm. Casual. Cruel in a polished way. You know they searched her apartment again this morning, right? I froze completely. Lucien did not move. What? I whispered. Victor slid his hands into his coat pockets. Seems your waitress matters more than expected. The entire mansion felt suddenly colder around me. Lucien turned slowly toward Victor with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger exactly. Something quieter. More dangerous because it was completely controlled. Get out, he said softly. Victor studied him for several long seconds before smiling faintly again. Careful, Lucien. His eyes flicked briefly toward me. Weakness makes enemies ambitious. Then he walked away into the storm without another word. Silence swallowed the room after the front doors closed. Lucien remained perfectly still beside the fireplace. I realized then something far worse than strangers searching for me. People were starting to notice Lucien De Luca cared whether they found me. Some people carried danger loudly. Raised voices. Sharp tempers. Threats thrown around like broken glass. Lucien De Luca carried danger quietly. That was what made him terrifying. After Victor left, silence settled over the mansion like smoke after a fire. Heavy. Suffocating. I stood near the staircase, gripping the railing too tightly while rain battered the windows outside. Lucien remained beside the fireplace without moving. One hand rested against the marble mantel, his expression unreadable now. They went back to my apartment. I asked softly. Lucien finally looked at me. Yes. And you were not planning to tell me? A muscle shifted in his jaw. I was handling it. Frustration cut through my fear instantly. You keep saying things like that. Because it is true. No, my voice shook harder now. You keep deciding things for me without asking. Lucien watched me carefully for several seconds. Not angry. Measuring. You are upset. I almost laughed. That is your observation? He moved away from the fireplace slowly. Fear usually becomes anger after enough exhaustion. The calmness in his voice somehow made me more emotional. People are searching my apartment because I accidentally overheard a conversation. My chest tightened painfully. Do you understand how insane my life sounds right now? Yes. Honest again. Always honest. That made it worse somehow. I looked away toward the rain-covered windows. I should call Owen. No, I turned sharply. You cannot control every part of my life. I can protect the parts being targeted. He is my brother. Lucien's expression softened slightly at that. Barely visible. Which is exactly why you cannot contact him yet. My stomach dropped. They know about Owen? Not yet. The yet landed like ice water inside my chest. Lucien stepped closer carefully. Listen to me. His voice lowered slightly. Steadier now. The people searching for you are trying to understand whether you matter. And do I? The question escaped before I could stop it. Silence filled the room instantly. Lucien's gray eyes locked onto mine with unsettling intensity. Yes. One word. Quiet. Certain. Something fragile shifted painfully inside my chest. I looked away first. That is the problem, I whispered. No, Lucien said softly. The problem is that other people are starting to notice. Thunder rolled outside while security lights reflected faintly across the marble floors. Somewhere deeper inside the mansion, a phone rang once before stopping abruptly. The entire house felt alert tonight. Watching. Waiting. Who exactly is Victor? I asked finally. Lucien's expression darkened immediately. An old friend. You said that like it hurts. A faint shadow crossed his face. Because it does. He walked toward the bar cart again, but did not pour anything this time. Victor and I built parts of this organization together years ago. And now we disagree about what kind of men we want to become. The honesty in that answer surprised me enough to stay quiet. Lucien leaned both hands against the marble counter briefly, exhaustion showing through his composure for the first time all day. Men like Victor believe fear solves everything. And you do not. His eyes lifted toward mine slowly. Fear controls people temporarily. His voice turned quieter, heavier somehow. Loyalty lasts longer. I thought about the way his staff moved around him. The way security guards listened instantly when he spoke. Not terrified. Devoted. That realization unsettled me more than fear would have. Why are you telling me all this? Lucien studied me carefully. Because nobody else explains things to you honestly. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Most people in my life explain things exactly that way. Landlords. Managers. Customers snapping fingers for more champagne. Nobody really speaking to me like I mattered enough for truth. Lucien suddenly glanced toward the hallway behind me. His posture changed instantly. Alert again. One of the guards approached quickly. Sir, we found the leak. The room went completely still. Lucien's voice became dangerously calm. Who? Someone inside Bellamy Security. My pulse stumbled painfully. The hotel. The guard nodded once. He sold Miss Arden's employee file yesterday morning. Lucien's expression never changed. Somehow that frightened me more. To who? The guard hesitated slightly. Victor's people. Silence crashed through the room harder than thunder. Lucien looked down briefly before closing his eyes once. Controlled. Thinking. Then he asked quietly, Does Victor know? We are not certain. I watched something colder settle behind Lucien's eyes. Not rage. Decision. He turned toward me slowly afterward. Pack a bag. My stomach dropped immediately. Why? Because you cannot stay here tonight. Fear surged back instantly. What? Lucien stepped closer, voice calm despite the storm building beneath it. If Victor's people accessed your information through Bellamy Security, this mansion is now an obvious location. Then where do I go? For the first time since I met him, Lucien looked genuinely conflicted. Tired. Protective. Dangerous all at once. Then quietly, almost reluctantly, he answered, "Somewhere nobody would ever think I care enough to hide you." The strangest thing about crossing into somebody else's world is how quickly your old life starts feeling small. 20 minutes after Lucien told me to pack, I sat inside another black car, watching Manhattan disappear behind rain-soaked windows again. Only this time, Lucien drove himself. No driver. No security convoy. Just us. That unsettled me more than the armed guards ever had. "Where are we going?" I asked quietly. Lucien kept one hand steady against the steering wheel while city lights flashed across his sharp profile. "Brooklyn." That does not narrow it down. A faint shadow of amusement touched his mouth briefly. "Good." Rain hammered softly against the windshield while jazz played low through the speakers. The city outside blurred silver and gold beneath the storm. I realized suddenly how exhausted I was. Not physically, emotionally, like fear itself had weight. Lucien noticed me rubbing my eyes. Of course he did. "Sleep if you need to." I do not think my nervous system remembers how anymore. Silence settled between us comfortably after that. Strange how quickly silence with him stopped feeling awkward. Most people filled quiet moments with noise because they feared what silence revealed. Lucien seemed built from silence. We crossed the Brooklyn Bridge just after midnight. Fog curled around the cables while Manhattan glittered behind us like another planet entirely. "You come here often?" I asked softly. "Not anymore." Something heavy moved beneath the words again. "Old grief, maybe." Lucien turned down a narrow street lined with old brick buildings and dim corner stores. No towering gates here. No marble fortress. Just ordinary Brooklyn under rain and streetlights. He parked beside a small Italian bakery with faded gold lettering across the windows. Closed for the night. Warm light still glowed upstairs. I stared at him in confusion. A bakery? Lucien unbuckled his seatbelt calmly. "Try not to sound disappointed." Before I could answer, the upstairs window suddenly opened. An older woman leaned out holding a dish towel in one hand. "Lucien." Her voice carried thick Italian warmth even through the rain. "You are late again." For the first time since I met him, Lucien smiled fully. Real smile. Uncontrolled. Human. It transformed him completely. Softer around the eyes. Younger somehow. My breath caught unexpectedly. "I know, Nana," he called back. "Traffic. You own half of New York. By better traffic." I nearly laughed. Lucien glanced toward me briefly, almost embarrassed. "Come inside." The bakery smelled like fresh bread, cinnamon, and espresso the second we entered. Warmth wrapped around me instantly after days of cold marble hallways and security checkpoints. Family photographs covered the walls beside old shelves stacked with pastries. Real life. Real warmth. An elderly woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. Small. Silver-haired. Sharp-eyed. "You brought me a girl during a thunderstorm?" she demanded immediately. "What kind of manners are these?" "Hello to you too, Nana." Her attention snapped toward me instantly. "Softer now. You are freezing." Before I could respond, she pulled me into the kitchen with surprising strength. "Sit." I obeyed automatically. Lucien leaned quietly against the doorway watching us with folded arms. Different here too. Less guarded. His shoulders finally lowered slightly. "What is your name, Bella?" the woman asked while pouring tea into porcelain cups. "Celeste." "Beautiful name." She pointed a spoon toward Lucien without looking at him. "This one never brings guests." Lucien sighed softly. "Nana." "It is true." She placed warm tea into my hands carefully. When he was little, he hated sharing toys too. I looked toward him instinctively. Lucien's expression turned dangerously calm. "I can still leave, you know." His grandmother ignored him completely. "You are too skinny," she informed me instead. "Do you eat enough?" "Nana interrogates everyone through food," Lucien muttered. "Because starving people make bad decisions." She narrowed her eyes at him suddenly. "Which explains many things about you." I covered a laugh behind the teacup too slowly. Lucien noticed immediately, gray eyes locking onto mine with quiet surprise. Like he had not expected me to laugh around him yet. The moment felt strangely fragile. Human. Then the bakery phone rang sharply from the front counter. Lucien's expression changed instantly. Cold again. Alert. He crossed the room and answered quietly in Italian. I did not understand the words, but I understood tension when I saw it. His posture stiffened immediately. Nana noticed too. The warmth faded from her face. Lucien ended the call slowly before looking toward me. Something dark settled behind his eyes again. What happened? I asked softly. Silence stretched for one terrible second. Then he answered quietly. Someone broke into your apartment tonight. The teacup nearly slipped from my hands. Owen. Lucian crossed the room immediately. Your brother is safe. My breathing finally returned. Barely. How do you know? Because I moved him 3 hours ago. I stared at him completely stunned. You what? Lucian crouched slightly beside my chair now, voice calm despite the storm building underneath it. The moment Victor's people accessed your file, Owen became vulnerable too. You took my brother? I protected him. My chest tightened painfully. Angry. Relieved. Overwhelmed all at once. You cannot just move people around like chess pieces. In my world, not moving them gets them hurt. The honesty in his voice shattered most of my anger instantly. Behind him, rain continued against the bakery windows while warm lights glowed softly across old family photographs. Lucian looked exhausted kneeling there beside me, powerful enough to terrify entire cities, yet somehow more concerned about my younger brother sleeping safely tonight than himself. And that was the exact moment I realized the most dangerous thing about Lucian DeLuca was not his power. It was how impossible he was becoming to fear completely. The safest places in the world are usually the smallest ones. Not mansions with armed guards. Not black SUVs behind iron gates. A tiny Brooklyn bakery at 2 in the morning felt safer than anything money could buy. Nana insisted I eat before asking another question. Warm cannoli appeared beside fresh espresso while rain tapped gently against the front windows. Nobody thinks clearly on an empty stomach, she declared firmly. Lucian leaned against the counter nearby watching us quietly. You say that every 5 minutes. Because every 5 minutes, somebody ignores me. I smiled despite everything. Nana noticed immediately. There. Better. She pointed toward Lucian accusingly. This one almost never smiles anymore. Lucian sighed softly. I brought you pastries last week. An emotional damage for 15 years. I nearly choked on my coffee, trying not to laugh. Lucian looked genuinely betrayed by my reaction. You are enjoying this too much. Maybe a little. For one dangerous moment, the fear disappeared completely. No strangers searching for me. No mafia politics. Just warm bread, rain outside, and an old woman bullying the most feared man in New York. Then Lucian's phone vibrated again across the counter. Everything changed instantly. He checked the screen once before his expression darkened. I need to take this. Nana waved him away dramatically. Go be terrifying somewhere else. Lucian stepped outside beneath the bakery awning with the phone pressed against his ear. Rain blurred his silhouette through the front windows while distant headlights passed across wet Brooklyn streets. I watched him pace slowly beneath the storm. Tension rolled off him visibly now. He carried too much too young, Nana said quietly beside me. I looked toward her. What do you mean? She stirred sugar into her espresso thoughtfully. Lucian was 17 when his father died. And he took over everything? She nodded once. Boys should inherit family recipes. Her voice softened painfully. Not enemies. My chest tightened unexpectedly. He never talks about himself. No, Nana smiled sadly. Lucian believes silence protects people. Outside, thunder rolled softly above the city while Lucian remained on the phone beneath the awning. Even from here, I could see exhaustion in his posture now. Why does he trust you? Nana asked suddenly. I do not think he does. Oh. She smiled knowingly. Then why did he bring you here? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because she was right. Men like Lucian DeLuca did not bring strangers into family spaces. Not unless something mattered. The bakery door opened moments later. Cold rain air followed Lucian back inside. His expression looked carved from stone again. We need to leave. Fear returned immediately. What happened? Lucian slid his phone into his pocket slowly. Someone leaked the Brooklyn location. Nana muttered something sharp in Italian under her breath. How? I asked. Lucian's jaw tightened. Victor has people watching my movements. So we run again? My voice came out smaller than intended. Lucian looked at me carefully for several long seconds. Something conflicted moved behind his eyes. No, the single word landed heavily. Different this time. What does that mean? He stepped closer slowly while rain battered the windows harder outside. It means I am finished moving you around because other men cannot respect boundaries. The calmness in his voice terrified me more than shouting would have. Nana noticed too. Her expression darkened slightly. Lucien. He did not look away from me. I spent years making sure nobody became leverage against me. His gray eyes locked onto mine completely now. And somehow you still did. My heartbeat stumbled painfully. The bakery suddenly felt too warm, too small. Lucien took another step closer before speaking again. Quiet, honest, dangerous. So now I stopped pretending you were temporary. Silence swallowed the room completely. Even the rain outside sounded distant suddenly. Nana stared at him across the kitchen like she had just witnessed something impossible. And judging by the look on her face, maybe she had. There are moments that split your life into before and after. Lucien standing inside that tiny Brooklyn bakery saying I was not temporary became one of mine. Nobody spoke for several seconds afterward. Rain hammered the windows while warm kitchen lights reflected across polished counters. Nana stared at her grandson like she no longer recognized him completely. Honestly, I understood the feeling. Lucien looked calm after saying it. Too calm. Like the words had lived inside him longer than either of us realized. Lucien, I whispered carefully. His gray eyes shifted toward me instantly. Softer now. Focused only on me despite the storm around us. I know. Do you? My voice shook slightly. Because I do not. He exhaled slowly through his nose. Tired. Human. Neither do I. Somehow that honesty hurt more than certainty would have. Before I could answer, headlights swept across the bakery windows outside. Everyone in the room reacted instantly. Lucien turned toward the street, while Nana's expression hardened with old familiarity. Not fear. Experience. A black sedan stopped beside the curb. Two men stepped out beneath umbrellas. Lucien relaxed only slightly. Mine, he said quietly. One of the guards entered moments later, rain dripping from his dark coat. Sir. His eyes flicked briefly toward me before returning to Lucien. We confirmed the leak. The warmth disappeared from the bakery instantly. Lucien folded his arms slowly. Who? Elias Mercer. My stomach tightened. The name meant nothing to me. But Lucien's expression changed immediately. Sharp. Personal somehow. Impossible. We checked twice. The guard lowered his voice. Mercer sold your Brooklyn movements directly to Victor's people. Silence crashed through the room heavily. Who is Elias? I asked carefully. Lucien did not answer right away. His gaze stayed fixed somewhere beyond the windows. Beyond the rain. Family, he said finally. One word. Heavy enough to darken the entire room. Nana closed her eyes briefly like the answer physically pained her. Lucien. He ignored the warning in her voice completely. How long? He asked the guard quietly. 3 months minimum. Betrayal changed him visibly. Not louder. Quieter. Colder. I realized then why Lucien feared loyalty breaking more than violence itself. Violence came from enemies. Betrayal came from people you once trusted enough to stop watching. He helped raise me, Lucien said softly, almost to himself. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Maybe there is another explanation. Lucien looked toward me then. Something heartbreakingly exhausted moved behind his eyes. Men only betray for 3 reasons, Celeste. His voice turned quieter. Fear, money, or envy. Which one is this? All 3. The guard's phone buzzed sharply. He checked the screen once before going still. Sir. Lucien's expression hardened instantly. What now? Mercer is gone. Rain pounded harder outside like the city itself was holding its breath. Gone where? Nobody knows. Lucien moved immediately toward the coat rack near the door. Focused now. Dangerous in that terrifyingly calm way again. You are leaving? I asked quickly. Yes. Lucien. He paused only when I said his name softly. Do not go alone. The room went completely still. Even the guards looked surprised I said it. Lucien turned toward me slowly. Something vulnerable flickered across his face, so briefly I almost missed it entirely. You are worried about me? Somebody should be. The answer escaped before I could stop it. Lucien stared at me for several long seconds beneath the warm bakery lights. Then quietly, almost rough around the edges, he said, That is a dangerous habit. He stepped closer afterward until only inches separated us. Close enough for me to catch cedarwood and rain on his coat. Lock the doors after I leave, he murmured. And do not open them unless you hear my voice. Fear curled sharply through my stomach again. Lucien. His hand lifted slightly, like he almost intended to touch my face. He stopped himself halfway. I will come back. Simple words. Quiet promise. Yet somehow they sounded heavier than vows. Then he turned and disappeared into the storm before I could answer. I stood frozen beside the bakery windows, watching the black sedan vanish into rain-soaked Brooklyn streets. And for the first time since all this started, I realized something terrifying. I was no longer afraid of losing my old life. I was afraid something would happen to him before he returned. Waiting becomes unbearable once your heart starts belonging somewhere dangerous. The bakery felt smaller after Lucien left. Every passing car outside made my pulse jump. Every shadow moving beneath the streetlights looked wrong somehow. Nana pretended to clean already spotless counters while watching me carefully from the corner of her eye. "Sit," she ordered gently around 3 in the morning. "You are pacing holes into my floor." I stopped beside the pastry case awkwardly. "Sorry. Do not apologize for loving somebody." The words hit me so fast I forgot how to breathe. "I do not." Nana raised one silver eyebrow. "Oh." That single sound carried decades of grandmother experience. I looked away immediately. Rain continued against the bakery windows while old jazz played softly from a radio behind the counter. "He has enemies because he protects people," she said quietly. Lucien always did. Protecting people should not destroy someone. No, sadness crossed her face briefly. But lonely men often mistake sacrifice for strength. My throat tightened painfully. Before I could answer, the front door rattled violently downstairs. Both of us froze instantly. Another hard pull shook the handle. Not Lucien. Fear surged through me immediately. One of Lucien's guards stepped from the hallway, hand already near his jacket. "Stay back." The knocking came again, louder this time. Then a familiar voice shouted through the storm outside. "Celeste." My stomach dropped instantly. "Owen." I rushed toward the door before the guard could stop me completely. Through the rain-covered glass, my younger brother stood trembling beneath the awning in a soaked hoodie. "Please," he shouted again. "Let me in." The guard blocked the door immediately. "Wait. That is my brother." "Exactly." Cold fear crawled down my spine. The guard pressed his hand to an earpiece quietly. "Sir is not answering." Owen knocked again desperately. "Celeste, I know you are in there." Every protective instinct inside me shattered logic completely. "Open the door." "Miss Arden." "That is my brother." The guard hesitated 1 second too long. I unlocked the door myself. Owen rushed inside, immediately dripping rainwater across the floor before pulling me into a tight hug. Thank God. His heartbeat hammered wildly against my shoulder. "Are you okay?" "I should ask you that." I pulled back enough to study him carefully. 20 years old. Exhausted eyes. Same storm gray gaze as our mother. "How did you find this place?" Owen looked away too quickly. "Someone told me." Every alarm inside my chest went off instantly. The guard noticed too. "Who?" Owen's expression tightened. "A man named Victor." Silence crashed through the bakery harder than thunder outside. The guard moved instantly then. "Calm. Fast. Get away from him." I stepped backward automatically. Owen looked panicked now. "Wait, I did not know." Headlights flooded the bakery windows suddenly. Multiple vehicles. Black SUVs sliding against wet Brooklyn pavement outside. Fear punched straight through my lungs. "No," I whispered. The guard cursed softly into his earpiece. "They tracked him here." Owen's face went completely pale. "Celeste," I swear I did not mean. The bakery lights cut out instantly. Darkness swallowed the room except for distant streetlights and rain-streaked headlights outside. Nana grabbed my wrist hard. "Back room. Now." Voices echoed outside beneath the storm. Car doors opening. Footsteps against wet pavement. My heartbeat slammed painfully against my ribs while the guard locked the front entrance electronically. "Lucien needs to answer his phone," he muttered sharply. Owen looked sick beside me. "I am sorry." I believed him immediately, which somehow made this worse. Then through the darkness, another sound cut across the storm outside. A car engine accelerating fast down the narrow Brooklyn street. Different. Louder. Familiar somehow. The guard suddenly exhaled once in relief. "That is him." Tires screeched outside the bakery. Doors slammed. Silence followed for 1 terrible second. Then a single male voice spoke sharply beyond the rain. Calm. Cold. Furious enough to freeze the entire street. Even through locked doors and thunder, I recognized Lucien instantly. And somehow, hearing his voice outside in the storm terrified me far more than the men who came looking for me. People imagine powerful men lose control loudly, shouting, breaking things, threatening everyone in sight. Lucien DeLuca lost control quietly. That was what made the storm outside feel truly dangerous. The bakery remained dark except for distant streetlights bleeding through rain-covered windows. Owen stood beside me shaking with guilt, while Lucien's guard watched the entrance carefully. Outside, nobody moved for several endless seconds. Then the front door opened slowly. Lucien stepped inside carrying rain and silence with him. Water dripped from his black coat onto the bakery floor. His gray eyes swept across the room once before landing on me instantly. Relief flashed across his face, so briefly it almost hurt to witness. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. "No," my voice came out smaller than intended. Lucien nodded once. Then his attention shifted toward Owen. The temperature inside the bakery dropped immediately. Owen straightened nervously. "I did not mean to lead them here." Lucien said nothing at first. Somehow that felt worse. Rain hammered the windows behind him, while distant headlights still glowed outside the bakery. "Victor approached you directly?" Lucien asked finally. Owen nodded quickly. "He said Celeste was in danger. And you believed him." Shame crossed Owen's face instantly. I was scared. Lucien studied him carefully for several long seconds. Then unexpectedly, his expression softened slightly. "Fear makes people predictable." Owen swallowed hard. "Are they gone?" Lucien glanced toward the street outside. "Yes." One word. Final enough to steady the entire room somehow. Nana turned the bakery lights back on slowly. Warm yellow light flooded across polished counters and exhausted faces. Lucien removed his soaked coat quietly before walking toward me. "You should sit down." "I am fine." "You are shaking." I looked down. He was right. Lucien noticed everything. He always noticed. "I thought something happened to you," I admitted softly. Something shifted behind his eyes immediately. Vulnerable. Human. Nothing was going to stop me from getting back here. The honesty in his voice wrapped around my heartbeat painfully. Owen looked awkwardly between us now, like he suddenly understood something neither of us had said aloud yet. Lucien reached up carefully, then paused near my face. "May I?" I nodded before thinking. His fingers brushed gently beneath my eye, wiping away rain or tears I had not realized were there. The touch lasted barely a second. Still, the entire world seemed to stop around it. "You came back," I whispered. Lucien's gaze held mine completely. "I told you I would." Behind us, Nana quietly dragged Owen toward the kitchen with suspiciously perfect timing. Suddenly the bakery felt smaller. Warmer. Dangerous in an entirely different way now. Lucien exhaled slowly before speaking again. "I spent years making sure nobody could reach me emotionally." A faint bitter smile touched his mouth. "Turns out all it took was a waitress carrying champagne." I laughed softly through the remaining fear. "Invisible waitress." No, his voice dropped lower. "Certain. Never invisible." Silence stretched between us while rain softened outside at last. Brooklyn glowed silver beyond the bakery windows. Lucien looked exhausted standing there. Powerful enough to terrify entire organizations. Yet somehow more honest with me than anyone had ever been. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. He looked around the tiny bakery slowly before answering. "Now." A strange softness entered his expression. "Now I stop treating you like a temporary complication." My chest tightened painfully again. "Lucien." "Celeste." He stepped closer until only inches separated us beneath warm bakery lights and the smell of fresh bread. "I do not know how to do normal. Honest. Always honest. But I know this." His gray eyes held mine completely. "The world spent years looking through you." His voice softened almost to a whisper. "I am never making that mistake." Somewhere behind us, Nana smiled quietly to herself in the kitchen while rain faded across sleeping Brooklyn streets. And standing there beside the most dangerous man in New York, I realized something impossible. For the first time in my life, I did not feel invisible anymore.